Hey everybody, welcome to Purpose People. We're here to talk about purpose, and today we're really delighted to bring you Hannah from Sycamore Communications. Welcome.
Hello.
I was just trying to remember the company. Having worked with you for so long, it's a bit silly. Basically, just tell us a little bit about what Sycamore Communications is all about, because it's really interesting how you take people into a space which was considered to be really good for businesses and then not so good, and now I think it's making a bit of a comeback. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Hannah. I'm founder of Sycamore Communications, public relations agency. We work with clients all over the UK. Ranging from startup businesses and even taking businesses who haven't even got a website or any sort of social platform or online presence at all, through that initial public relations sort of strategy and planning stages before they even get to the point of launching a product or a service, right through to companies that come to us already turning over £10 million or so.
So quite varied in terms of the...
Social media enterprises as well. And we've also started taking on a lot more clients on an individual basis. So CEOs, entrepreneurs who are looking for support in raising their personal brand in the media, as opposed to promoting the business itself.
Right. So, for me, obviously, my background being in brand and telling stories. And I think where the whole PR thing is that next level of telling stories, I would say. And it's a major sort of like compliment to brand in itself. So, I mean, there are people that kind of like stray away from it because they don't want to be in the press. They don't want to call it. What would you say to those sorts of people that like, why use PR? Because if it's used well, it's brilliant. But I think when we say PR, a lot of people have it in a negative context, don't they? They're like a bit worried.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand that and have conversations with potential clients wanting to come on board who are either skeptical or just have a lack of confidence in themselves in terms of how to present, how to be on camera, how to talk confidently. And that's where a good agency comes in terms of offering a helping hand and explaining the process, explaining what goes on behind the scenes in terms of the process of how to liaise with journalists, how to structure content, how to pitch and send all that content to journalists in a way that is going to land them coverage and content. But I also think it's how an agency works with individual clients. So for us, we have a tiered structure so that we're not forcing a shy or unconfident client to go straight onto a live 10-minute interview on ITV. So we've got different points along the way in order to be able to place them. So we work with them at the level that's right for them and build up their confidence slowly.
Yeah, that's a key point for me. I think it's about clarity and confidence. I think brand essentially gives that sense of clarity. I think people that have a strong brand almost have the confidence to begin to do it, and then you're assisting them in terms of media training. But I think the much bigger thing is that when people think PR, it really gets them to think, ooh, I'm not completely convinced of who I am. I'm not convinced I'm doing the right thing. And you talk about things like imposter syndrome. I mean, the minute you talk PR, I think that's the thing that quickly follows. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be a fake or I'm going to get found out. I've been watching the interviews with The Apprentice, and you watch how their confidence evaporates because they've been digging into their backgrounds and stuff like that. So for me, it's a case of going into that arena, which is uncomfortable in any way, how do you help someone be comfortable in that environment? How do you do that? Do you just double down on their identity and find out who they are first and foremost?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it comes down to integrity. There are companies out there who are experts and really good at kind of going, right, okay, how do we create news out of nothing, and sort of look at stunts and, campaigns to grab attention from scratch. For me, I prefer to work in a manner where I look at the stories that are naturally there within a business and within a person, like you say, drawing out their identity, their expertise and pulling that out as well, because for me it feels more real, and that's what's going to get people's attention and add to their credibility, which is the vast majority of the time what clients come to us wanting help in getting their credibility and expertise out there more. You know, it's not about quick stunts or, you know, fluffy stories. It's about how can I really be perceived as a leader within my sector.
Yeah, and I think the great thing that you uncover is you having worked with you and working with you is you get people to look back at where they've come from. You know, there might have been that kitchen table company that now has 5 staff or 10 staff. That's a journey in itself, rather than go, oh, I got nothing good to say, so I'm not any good. And I think you said you experience that at every level. You know, whether it's the startup thinking I'm not good enough to the company that's turning over 10 million and they still don't think they're good enough.
Yeah, I think it takes an external perspective to sort of uncover that and, you know, and give confidence to people. I mean, I have it myself. I've been running for 5 years, first podcast today, because I'm so used to putting my clients in the spotlight and you know, giving them the sort of opportunities to showcase that I haven't treated myself as if I'm a client in my own right, which is all about, you know, this year is my focus to do that. But I think sometimes it does take that person looking in to say, hang on, take a pause a minute, let's just reflect. You started from here and now you're here. Like, there's value in that, and other people, you know, coming up behind you in terms of that entrepreneur journey need to hear your experiences and will be grateful for the stories and expertise that you can share.
Yeah, it goes back to that comparison thing. There's always going to be someone with a bigger boat, richer than you, bigger house, more cars than you, and that sort of stuff. There's always going to be people with more awards than you or whatever. But it's to remove that aside and get out of that, I'm trying to compete. It's more about telling your story and what you do. So, Hannah, do you want to tell a little bit about your story? Because it's really interesting how you started and why you started and now where you are as a person and as a company. Do you want to just tell a bit about the story? News exclusive.
But this is quite an emotive thing for me and not something that I have widely talked about. But when people ask business owners, you know, what made you start? You know, have you always wanted to be a business owner? And, you know, from the age of 4 or whatever it might be. And a lot of people, you know, have always had a vision or a drive to get to that point. And for me, I actually hadn't. I didn't think it was going to be something that was an option for me.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't think I could achieve it. I just didn't have it in my mind that was, you know, a path that could be gone down. And it actually came from a place of getting to a breaking point. So I'd gone to Cardiff Uni, studied English language and linguistics, and had sort of 10 years of experience working both in-house, small family-run agencies, right through to agencies that are sort of 10 or so offices around the UK. Wow, okay. So businesses of all sizes. And for me, I'd had a number of experiences in terms of really kind of poor, toxic management. That I found really, really difficult. I noticed a consistent pattern of, you know, when you first get appointed into a lot of roles, you're coming in at a point where the business needs either extra support, you're bringing in new skills. So you are the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And you're put on a pedestal a little bit and promise sort of pay rises or promotions or, you know, sort of the carrot dangling incentives, and you work really hard to get there. And I'd noticed that consistently you kind of get to a certain glass ceiling almost, and then there's often nowhere else to go, particularly within smaller businesses. So then you become, for want of a better word, a bit of a threat in terms of competing against the people who are sort of putting, you know, through those promotions, and then you're pushed back down. And for me, I had that time and time again. And it got to the point where I thought, okay, well, this must just be the way things work in a creative industry, you know. And I must caveat this by saying every single role that I've had has put me in a position where I've had amazing experiences, you know, worked with incredible clients, got to do really cool things. Yeah. And each job has equipped me with the skills to lead me to this point where I'm like, okay, I can do this by myself. Great. But I don't think that shouldn't be the compromise that you have to make. You know, that shouldn't be like the sort of counter between the two. And so for me, I'd also never seen anyone challenge that behaviour. So I thought that, you know, if I want really cool jobs, this is sort of what you have to put up with in order to have, you know, these brands that you work with, or events that you go to, or, you know, sort of behind the scenes opportunities. And I'd sort of seen it firsthand, you know, working in hotels. I think there are certain sectors where it's almost just an unspoken understanding. Chefing, for example, you know, it's notorious. You see it on TV shows all the time in terms of when you're working your way up through hierarchies, you don't get treated the best as a chef.
No, exactly. Gordon Ramsay.
Exactly. Example number one. And for me, I just got to a crunch point where I thought, this is really not the way I want to sort of be spending the rest of my working life. And actually got, you know, a lot of my friends and family got signed off with sort of burnout and, you know, doctors' notes sort of need to take some time off. And that was a real turning point for me, being like, okay, something's not right here. And so my drive, my sort of initial purpose with Sycamore was, I felt like the only option I had left in a professional capacity was to start on my own, which was terrifying. But I felt like it was the only option I had to sort of
get out of the situation. It's a couple of things there is that I find with smaller businesses, the founder or the owner or whatever has to make a decision whether there's not room enough for two huge leaders. And so what happens to happen is the self-aware leader slowly removes himself and allows the other people to raise up into those positions. Because if you've got a successful business and that person that's coming through the ranks is really good at what they do, that speaks more for you than beating them down because you want to be the loudest voice. And I think that's a leadership thing that I don't think a lot of people get. And it's also a misunderstanding maybe of the business owner entrepreneurial itch, because that person's probably frustrated who started it or founded that business, where they're looking to do other things, but they've not been brave enough to go and ask those questions of what other things look like, because this is their thing. And I think that needs to be educated across the board. And, you know, I was fortunate where I had a coach, Ollie, who's now my business partner, where he said, you know, are you a business owner or entrepreneur? And that was the tension I was getting, because I was realizing that I wanted to do other things and I didn't want to get in the way of those people coming through. I wanted to come out, not to just disappear because I'm still around, but it was more that the leaders were getting stronger and better and faster and braver and, you know, better at what they do than what I was, and in terms of me. So I had to get out of the way. And I think you got two people, the ones that hold on to the reins and rather loads of juniors around them, or those that just allow other people to grow and move out and move on. So I think to business owners out there, they need to be braver to move out of the way. I think the other thing is indicative is that, you know, did you find that was a problem in that particular industry, or were you or, you know, because you obviously connected to a whole load of organizations, was that just a cultural thing, or that you spotted? Was it just the industry, or was it just the type of leadership that you were?
At the time, I felt like I was the only person going through it, which also made it, again, harder to challenge or to speak out, or even just have conversations with other colleagues sort of behind closed doors, because you think, oh, you know, I don't want to be the person to rock the boat. And like I say, until a certain point, I'd never seen or heard anyone challenge behaviours anyway. I had an experience where colleagues were actually handing in their notice off the back of how they saw me be treated. And that was the very first time where I thought, oh, actually, someone's taking a stand on my behalf, and yet I'm not doing anything. So that was a real tipping point for me. But it's only since I've set up Sycamore, joined new, you know, networking groups and speaking to both men and women in a whole range of sectors that to answer your question, I think it is more common, but it's an unspoken thing. So today is quite a big one for me to sort of speak out, you know, obviously in a diplomatic way, but to still raise an awareness and sort of encourage other people to sort of not stand for it like I did for probably too long. I
think what I found is that when when you're going through some of that stuff and you haven't got a circle around where you can reflect and bounce off of, you almost say, oh, is this normal? You know, and I think it gives you the ability when you've got other people in your life to go, well, what is normal? Because you forget what normal looks like.
Yeah.
You know, and I think for me, it's that when it's almost like you don't want to speak up because you don't want to be the rebel, you don't want to be the bad person, you don't want to be, but when you get around enough people and they're all coming to the same similar conclusions, and then you take a bigger step back and you start reading articles and you think, oh, hang on a minute, this is a problem. So you're in this thing, because we talk about, I've got a book obviously called The Crisis Catalyst. So you're in the midst of your crisis that has now forced you to make some big decisions. So just talk us through that journey where you were.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it did get to crunch point. I was, like I say, I was signed off work and I thought, right, there's got to be a tipping point. And it was a terrifying step forward to make, because I, had worked in comms in various different forms for the best part of 10 years, digital marketing, advertising, PR. So I knew I could do the day-to-day job and do a good job for any clients I was lucky to get, lined up. But the business side of it, I mean, I was flying by the seat of my pants from a day-to-day basis. Didn't have a clue. And every day, I mean, it still is now, every day is a learning day. And you sort of find yourself in positions where you're like, oh God, I need to quickly put this new document together because I'm bringing staff on for the first time, or contracts, or, VAT registration, whatever it might be. There's always that next thing that you go, oh, okay, quick bit of research. But yeah, it was really hard, and it was a terrifying stride, but it felt like the only thing that was
the next
left.
Sort of like natural step. Because you say to me that, you came out of that environment feeling troubled and thinking this is the only way I can get through it. But I think there's still part of you that wants to champion those people that are going through a similar thing. Hence why you're coming on the podcast. And do you want to just share us a little bit about what you felt the toxic leadership type thing was doing to you as a person?
It's sort of hard. It is hard to sort of talk about diplomatically without giving sort of, a set of examples. But I mean, behind closed doors, it was definitely rocking my confidence. It was having a major impact on, personal relationships at the time, which simultaneously to this going on in the workplace, my relationship was sort of breaking down at the time as well. So there was a lot going on, and it just sort of took me to a really dark place, because you felt like, when you're being told you're not good at your job and you've been sort of carried for 3 years, and that you're not adding value to a team, when all you have done your whole career is work hard to sort of climb the ladder. It's a real sort of contrast of emotions when you're doing your best but told that actually you're giving your worst. And I think the carrot dangling messes with your mind after a long time as well. Or if you just do this, then we'll give you the promotion. If you just another 6 months, and then it's, a pay rise, or whatever it is that you're striving for. And the goalpost constantly being moved. I think it feeds into the imposter syndrome that a lot of people do talk about. Am I good enough? Am I really needed in this team? Am I adding value?
But I think what's happened now is that 5 years on as your business, I use that statement, time tells. So by moving on and doing what you're doing over the period of 5 years, you've proved that you're more than capable. You've proved that you can help people. All the things that were deemed negative, you've turned them as a fuel and shown actually you are competent at what you're doing. And I'm not saying it's to pump any ego up, but the reality is that you were made for bigger than the role that you were actually in. And I think maybe that essence of imposter syndrome, or not the confidence that you had, you were stuck in that role thinking, I can't do it. But in fact, what was actually in you burst forth eventually and said, right, I'm just going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And whatever the outcome is, the outcome. And it's a huge risk. But I think that often happens. You get pushed so much that eventually who you're supposed to be begins to push through it and emerge from that challenges. And I think now, obviously, working 5 years and working with you, for example, you can see now how you're enjoying what you're doing. You're flowing in what you're doing.
Yeah, love it. And it hasn't stayed the same over that 5 years either. We've gone through sort of major changes in terms of what Sycamore looks like and what we now offer to clients. compared to when we started. So I think when you go back to that topic of purpose, for me, it's completely changed. And we were chatting earlier, there are some businesses and previous podcast guests who come on with a very clear, well-defined purpose from the moment that they set up their company, whether that be giving it back to certain people within the community who need help, or fundraising and stuff. And for me, although it's actually a bit sort of embarrassing to say, but that first year for me, I felt like my main drive and my main purpose was almost to prove to people, actually, to counter everything that I'd been told, which is actually not a very healthy drive. And it's taken a little bit of time to shake that off, and to sort of re-find a happier, healthier purpose.
But interesting what you say there is that your drive there was to prove everyone wrong. But eventually, I think you come to that place where actually I don't need it, and I think the sign of maturity in a business and you as a human is you almost get to the point where it doesn't matter now. I am who I am, and if you like me, you like me, and if you don't like me, you don't like me.
Yeah.
And I think I can only come into that conclusion when you look at prime ministers. I mean, maybe the UK one's a really difficult example, but let's
questionable.
Let's go to the US. Let's focus even there. But let's use an example like President Obama. Let's just use that. If he cared about what every single person said about him, then he would never have been president. Or if he was president and then had to address every criticism that came against him, he would spend all his days writing apologies and letters and and never get done what he needs to get done. And that's a macro level, but on a micro level, it's the same for small businesses, right? You're always going to get to that point where people have got an opinion on you, whether it's good or bad. I always tell the story because I still find it absolutely absurd. My friend came over in a Ferrari.
Okay.
And I just happened to get in the Ferrari, and I drove up the street and back the street, and a couple of mates took a picture and we put it on the thing. And I just said, "Oh, great driving this car." It was never intended. Look at me, I just purchased a Ferrari. But that's what happened.
Okay.
My mum got a message from someone, a DM going, "I can't believe that your son has bought a Ferrari. Judging by, the family," because my mum and dad were struggling with the house situation. He bought a Ferrari where he could have bought you a house instead. I was like, wow, do people really think like this? And I had to get to that point where actually it doesn't matter. You know what? Think what you think. It says more about you than it does me. I've got to go and do what I'm supposed to do. And I guess that incident in a sense helped me eliminate that bad PR thing, because you could see bad PR phoning someone like you up going, "Oh, how do I fix this?" And I got to the point where actually it doesn't matter, because like for you, as you got closer to who you are and the business that you are, all of a sudden those voices weren't as loud anymore. Yeah,
it's almost like shedding your skin when you get to that point of actually accepting the fact that you were good enough all along, and it's only one person's opinion, which you can either choose to let affect you, which I did as still today, a sort of Gemini, people pleaser, want to bend over backwards to over service clients all the time, which my business coach is sort of rapping me on the knuckles for on a regular basis. But just wanting to be sort of taken sort of face value by everybody.
But it's that it's a sense of you almost leave those voices along to give other people their voice and help them. But I mean, your experience is an experience that a lot of people go through, and a lot of people don't know how to vocalize it, don't know how to do it, or they're starting businesses in a way they've started to prove someone wrong. And then you say, well, no, it's got to go deeper than that, because eventually it just runs out. It's like saying, I'm starting a business to make money. It's good to a point, but that's not enough to scale it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's got to be other motives there. So, what was a transition where you went from proving people wrong, where you went, no, okay, it's more than this? When did you start to sort of like the penny began to drop?
I think it's still an ongoing, evolving process, to be honest, because the business has completely changed over the course of 5 years. We had that first year of sort of finding our feet and just trying to grow the business like everyone does, sort of put in that hustle in the first year, because you don't want to be that stat of, is it 60% or something of businesses, or even put higher, fail within the first 2 years. That was also like, I don't want to be in that category. and took somebody on, and then COVID hit. So all of our clients, when we first set up as a full comms agency as well, our sort of niche, our identity was in the festivals and live event sector.
Right.
And so for that to disappear completely overnight was a OS moment.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, how, having just committed to, a permanent part-time member of staff, you think, okay, I've got real responsibilities here. How am I going to suddenly pull out enough money to support and keep the business going at a time when everything was shut down?
Yeah.
Luckily, I joined a really good supportive business networking group at the time, full of positive people who were still investing into their businesses. So for us, that was great because we have a service that people are always going to need.
Yeah.
And can be delivered through a difficult time like that as well, which was the saving grace. So we then changed our sort of identity to working with businesses of in all sectors, but started to narrow down just to public relations because I realised I was sort of a bit of a jack of all trades. I was spreading myself too thin. Trying to deliver all the comm services to clients was just, I didn't feel like people were getting an exceptional level of service, and I kind of was like, right, I really want to be really proud of what we're delivering to clients. So really sort of narrowed down in terms of what we loved doing best. And then obviously came out of COVID, and it's been the making of the business because, I mean, certainly in the last 5 months, we've grown from having sort of 5 ongoing clients to 16 now in just since October, which has been crazy. So the journey has sort of been constantly changing. Our purpose has shifted and meandered as I've changed as a person as well. So to answer your question, I still think I'm developing that sort of identity and purpose now.
But I think you're clearer, and I think the thing is that, how do I put it? It's like a magnet. You're there, and like when you take a magnet and before it actually connects, you're moving it around. You can feel it getting closer and then further away, and I think eventually it just snaps into place. And I think what you've done is that where you've made the big decision to flip into what you're supposed to do, whereas a lot of people may continue doing that stuff, dealing with the rubbish or whatever else, and eventually stay in it long enough to go, okay, I now know what I'm going to do, and then make the pivot and make the change. In your instance, you went, I know I need to make the change, and then kind of figured it out as you went, but it's starting to snap together now. Having worked with you and gone through what we've gone through with creation and stuff, I think for me, it's just seeing that you've got a very clear mission, vision, and value set now that you have. You're very clear on what your value proposition is. And, as I said, it's been great to see that when I talk about PR and point people to your website, these guys know exactly what they're about. I think you have that clarity now. I think you still will find your type of people. Yeah. As in you'll go, you'll know immediately if you can work with them or not. Thankfully, we are.
Absolutely.
But it's that those people that are committed to sort of like making those pivots, making those changes. And I think for me, PR is such an underplayed tool that even me in brand didn't really think too much of it until we ended up having chats and talks. And I realized that actually some of the biggest brands in the world have grown. Saatchi and Saatchi, there's one brother who's exceptional creative, the other one knew PR. So if they changed the toilet roll, he would tell Design Week. It was literally that's how whatever they did, they told, and it got positive PR. So I think PR is a great way to tell authentic stories, which is what you're looking for. Yeah. You're looking for authentic people and authentic stories, and yours is one of them. So I think for you as a human, as a person, the stories that you have, you need to continually tell. So do you want to just share a couple of people that you've helped on their journey? Because we've got a little bit about yours, but some PR journeys where you've taken someone that's like, I'm scared of it, to where they've ended up,
Yeah, I mean, one of the clients that springs to mind immediately is a couple who run a plant-based company who were going into schools and working with independent schools initially, because obviously council-run establishments have a lot more sort of tenders and stuff to go through.
Yeah.
But they were the first company in the UK to offer plant-based school dinners for children, not just from a health perspective, but also ensuring that children from any religion have accessible sort of, you know, dinners and stuff. So we were sort of launching that to a national audience. So having had no PR at all. We had ITV down. They have been contacted by Greenpeace for documentaries. Wow. They've had international, like French documentary makers come over as well. So they've gone from 0 to 100 in the space of about a year, to the point where they're selling other businesses to then sort of really focus on just this, offering, wanting to take it just from Worthing to where they're based and where they started, through to looking at UK wide schemes, which is really exciting. But I'm drawn to those sorts of people who are, you know, doing a first, or, you know, sort of pushing back into community and wanting that platform to really sort of share their story.
Yeah. So, you know, that's the thing, isn't it? I think it's the case of, you can work with someone on a journey, and they don't have to be super successful to start off with, because that's part of the journey, right? That you can help them as they begin to get success, begin to share it. Because that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, I've always said this, I find it very hard to share my wins. I just like, well, no, I've got the next thing, or the next thing, or the next thing. So one of the things that you did with me is say, go back and look what you've done so far and begin to communicate that. And it actually got me to sit there and just stop and go, okay, yeah, there's loads of things that I want to be more successful, but actually I've been quite successful in other things.
Absolutely. You know? Having that moment of reflection before you go bounding on to the next thing, I think, is really valuable. And when any client comes on board, we always make sure that we do a series of interview questions right at the start, so that we can create those bios. And it's amazing the number of people who say the same thing as you. Like, actually, when you read a single paragraph about yourself or the business, you think, which is stuffed full of all those hero facts and successes that have been achieved over the years, it's really quite a punchy thing to just have in black and white in front of you. Yeah,
because it is. I don't know whether it's a mindset thing or what it is, but you know, because you know everything's not perfect, you never really think, oh, I've got it nailed, or I'm flourishing. You know, there's always that unfinished bit of business, or that unfinished thing where you think, until I get that done, I can't now be successful. But you know, it doesn't matter what size business, I've been doing it now however many years, and there's never a time where it's perfect. You know, it's either money issues, or it's people issues, or it's client issues, or there's always issues, right? And it's just beginning to realize that actually you're on a journey, you know, and you might, as long as you're making progress, I think that's the thing. As long as you're making progress, then it's good to celebrate those type of things.
I think I was having a conversation the other day in terms of the way that sports psychologists are brought into a lot of, like, you know, Bath Rugby and international sports as well, because it feeds into that imposter syndrome thing, where actually, if you're always striving for, you know, that next result, you don't have the confidence in what you have achieved so far, because you're always thinking, I haven't achieved this yet, and that, and it can beat you down a little bit. And actually, this is where a lot of investment is happening in sports teams, to go, actually, you're here already, take stock of that. And I think as business owners, particularly if you work on your own and you don't have a team around you, it can be hard when you haven't got those cheerleaders to sort of pump you up on a Monday morning and go, come on, we can do this.
But that's the great thing about it, right? Is that that's good having a PR agency, because they actually do that. Look, you've done great. You need to talk about it, you know, and it's another voice looking in and going, hey, you know, you need to share about that. Whereas, you know, in your own head or in your own space, you're like, no, I'm not quite, you know, I'm not Alan Sugar yet, or whoever.
I don't deserve that award, so I'm not going to, you know, try and put myself forward for it. Or
and that's one of the things you've been dealing with me on, is awards. You know, I always shy away from them. You know, I was just like, oh, you know, but it's a good strategy. It is, and you know, the awards that win on merit, not on you pay. You need to buy a table of 10 before we give you an award. And if you've paid for a table of 10, you get a phone call going, "Hey, you've won."
Yeah, I can see it behind you now. Business Person of the Year.
That was unexpected. I was just asked to put an application thing in, and then got it, and they apparently went through a whole load of people, and I kind of got it. didn't win. I got highly commended, which is second. So you know what? Maybe that's part of it as well. Learning
But
that.
there are a lot of people out there who haven't even put an entry in. So, you're beating yourself up about highly commended. So come on.
Yeah, see what I mean? But then that competitive nature, I've got to get the trophy. But that's the thing. It's like when you talk about sports, is that you've got these Premier League football players that are beating themselves up, thinking they're not good enough. But there's only one team that can win the Premier League. There's 19 teams every year that don't win anything in that league. And I'm thinking, so what? You're all completely useless? There's only one team that can win all the time. Now, at the moment, it seems like the one with the most money wins. But the point of it is, if you are at that level, that's an achievement in itself, because there's only like 1% of people actually even make it, And I think sometimes we just got to have that wider picture, that bigger reflective piece that say, if you've played Premier League football for 4 years at the top, take a step back and go, wow, that's an incredible journey. And I look at, I'm a Liverpool fan, I look at Michael Owen. And so Michael Owen, he was really successful as a young kid, and then his career began to, as he got more and more injured, it just got worse and worse. But when he takes a step back, he actually won the World Player of the Year. Like, I think he was 2021.
Incredible achievement.
Which is a mad achievement. Yeah. Like he's won that, and yet when everyone talks, he was rubbish towards the end of his career. Yeah, but he did it. He got there. He managed to achieve something that most kids who play football would absolutely dream of. And I think sometimes owning the business, running the business, doing those things, that's an achievement in itself. And maybe we don't all give ourselves enough credit on that score, So what about like someone who's considering PR as a strategy? Do you want to just share a little bit about that? Because for me, it was something that I knew existed, email marketing, social media, SEO, pay-per-click, and PR is that sort of like the one that sits out the side that not many people pick up. And I'm now thinking, it's a thing worth picking up. It's a thing worth investing in. And you've got some packages that allow people to dip their toe in the water, and because it seems like the big scary media, and you've been there, who to talk to and stuff like that. So someone starting out, what would you say to them?
Well, the way I sort of describe it to someone who's never entered the world of PR before is that it's done in two halves. Well, that's the way that I kind of operate. One side being proactive. So you look at the stories that are within the team or the business itself or the product. And, as an agency, we would look to communicate those stories, look at the goals of the business as well, what they want to achieve over the next year or so, and go, okay, with those stories that are sat within the business, so whether that's investment or team expansion or, new offers to clients, whatever it might be, taking that story and pushing it out to the right publications at the right time, so you're attracting the right audience for that company. And then there's the reactive side as well. So every day, journalists will be writing a myriad of different articles, and they can't be an expert on everything. So they use PRs like ourselves to say, okay, who are your clients? How can they help us? Can you support with a comment in 2 hours' time to help us pull this amazing feature together? So that's where the relationships come in terms of really knowing the strengths of your clients and whether they're best placed to be the expert, on a particular topic, and positioning them in a way that makes them stand out above and beyond all the other PRs who are doing the same thing in the UK as well. And that's where, those bios are really useful, because you can fire them out to journalists really quickly, making sure that you're responding really quickly, and positioning your clients as the go-to person in their sector.
Because the interesting for me is the whole. So when people basically begin to be authentic in who they are as people and as humans, they relaxed in terms of who they are, because you've given them permission to be who they are, and then you find in publications to express who they are rather than you're trying to pretend to be someone else. I think that makes all the difference. I mean, when you say here's a media opportunity, people feel that they've got to act up to the media. They've got to be fronting up to something or put a mask on to be that person in front of the camera, when in fact you give them permission and say, no, we'll put you in front of the right people that can tell the right story, so you can just be who you're supposed to be.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier as well, in regards to really getting to know your clients first before you put them up, forward for any media opportunity, because I've got some clients who are exceptionally knowledgeable in their area, but they're painfully shy.
Yeah.
So I know that the strategy for that company needs to be written opportunities only, because their worst nightmare is to be doing something like this. They would hate it. And that confidence will build over time, and they will get more comfortable with sort of maybe speaking to a journalist on the phone, with me there on the line too, to sort of support and nudge them in the right direction, making sure that their key messaging is being mentioned.
Yeah.
And then, there's next stages. I've got plans to sort of launch camera confidence courses later this year for clients that know the benefit of PR, know that they want to be able to jump on TV, but actually aren't in that place personally yet. But it's working with them so that they're confident and comfortable at every point. And some clients come in and they're like, right, let's go. I've got my own podcast already. Celebrities, book them now. But that's not going to be right for everybody on day one.
Yeah, but what I like about that, again, is that you just said that depending on someone's personality, is dependent on what opportunities you put them forward for, which I really like, rather than, you need to go on to ITV. But, is that the only route where you're saying, no, you'll be better to be in print, or you're better in front of camera because, maybe writing or answering a whole load of questions is too much for you, you're too busy. So I like the fact that you find you take the time to learn the person, but then it's a case of what PR opportunities work rather than everything. Give me as much PR as possible. I want it all, And
that's great for some clients. But if you were to place a really shy, stuttering client on a live TV interview, how is that going to affect their PR? How is that going to represent their brand? Probably not in the best way, because they won't be confident. No. They won't come across as the expert, and people go, oh, well, that person that they've also interviewed on this feature, they're a bit better.
Yeah.
Even though actually your client probably has more awards behind the scenes, but when you're given that split second to represent yourself, it's like, okay, how do we do this in the best way possible?
I like the fact that you give people media training, because I think that's one of the things I said about public speaking is no one really, you can do public speaking courses, but generally, and I think you should, but generally people learn as they do it more and more and more. And unfortunately, with the press and the media, you don't get that time to learn it. So, as you said, if I get it wrong, then it's almost sudden, we won't use them. There are loads of people that want to be in front of the camera. So if you fail, it's almost like you could even become a meme, for example. And then it's like,
no one wants to be a rolling meme, do they?
No one wants to be one of those GIFs at the bottom of something. So, I mean, in terms of what I say is that authentic piece that you do at the beginning is back to aligning people to find out that they are on purpose. Because I think if you are who you're supposed to be, if you are doing who you are, as in I'm made to do this, then you forget about the need to compete with other people. You're just confident in your own skin and who I am, and deliver that message. And I think your journey is taking people on that. There was a catalyst, in a way, a negative catalyst that promoted you into that. But what I do recognize is you are absolutely comfortable in your own skin in terms of doing what you're doing. You're very knowledgeable in terms of what you've got. But you have that reassuring thing.
That's lovely to hear. Thank you.
You do. You have that reassurance, because, I know, when I was stepping into the whole PR thing, and I said, "Oh, this is a bit whatever." It's okay. We'll just take the time, and we'll step by step. And I think anyone that's looking to go down that route, not to get fearful, you need to go with someone that's like yourself that can walk with you and scale it. And I think that's one of the qualities that you have, is that reassurance in what seems to be a vicious world called PR. We say, no, we can navigate and find the right publications. I just always reminded of that in Notting Hill. Remember Notting Hill?
I do.
Remember the Horse and Hound? It which reminds me just how absurd. They're all in the room, isn't it? And he takes the camera and says, "Where you from, Horse and Hound?" He's just making it up as he goes along. I know that you don't do that for the people that you pop forward. They're completely confident in who they're supposed to be.
I did love that magazine growing up as a horsey girl.
Horse and Hound, yeah. There you go. You should be on it.
Great reference for
Horse
my
and
world.
Hound. There, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, Hannah, it's been an absolute pleasure getting you on. How would people get in touch with you?
So our website is www.sycamorecommunications.com. We are on all the social channels, Facebook, Instagram, and also part of Intro Biz and all the networking events as well. So I'd love to meet more of your viewers in person.
Yeah, no, it'd be fantastic. So thank you so much, Hannah. It's been an absolute privilege. I know we could talk even more and get into some more nuances and stuff, but you know what? You should be on podcasts more because it was really good. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Cheers.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being part of the Purpose People podcast. You can follow us on any of the major platforms like Apple, Spotify, and Google podcasts, as well as like and subscribe us on YouTube. We really want to help you live life on purpose and live the life that you were born and created to do. One of the things that we do is we're giving you plenty of free tools to actually help you live a life on purpose for purpose. We've got the thing called the Purpose Questionnaire. Now, the Purpose Questionnaire enables you to answer a series of questions that helps you and find where you are on your purpose journey. As a result of that, you'll get a score and you'll get some feedback of how we can take you to your next level of living.